associated with happy kids, goofy costumes, and good times. But it all comes at a price, and sometimes that price just might be your life. Because it's not always about tricks and treats, often it's dead bodies in the streets. So with that being said, we now commence the Modern Whiz Month of Fright and welcome you to our list of 5 gruesome Halloween crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. Canadian Killer. In 2011, Taylor Van Dyst was leaving a party in a small town of Armstrong, Canada, and around 6 p.m. she began walking home dressed like a zombie for Halloween. Taylor was texting back and forth with her friend at the time, and in the last text her friend received, she wrote about being creeped out or followed. She never came home that night and was found beaten to death near a set of railroad tracks. Her death traumatized the town, especially when it was revealed that her attacker intended to rape her before smashing her head in with a flashlight when she fought back. Police eventually used DNA found under Taylor's fingernails to arrest Matthew Forrester for carrying out the murder and his father, Stephen, for helping him cover it up. The Candyman. Ronald O'Brien gave his 8-year-old son Timothy one last piece of candy before trick-or-treating ended for the night. Almost immediately after eating the pixie sticks, Timothy started convulsing and died less than an hour later. The death sent their small Texas town into a panic, and the police determined that the pixie sticks that Timothy ate were laced with cyanide. At first, people thought it was a stranger who had poisoned Timothy, but when Ronald's story kept changing, police began investigating him. They found out that he was over $100,000 in debt at the time and that he had taken out massive life insurance policies on his children. Police discovered that O'Brien had also given poison candy to his daughter and 3 other children in an attempt to cover up his crime, but none of his other children had eaten them. Ronald O'Brien was later nicknamed the Candyman and was found guilty of murder, sentenced to death, and executed in 1984. Ohio Killing Spree. On Halloween 2010, Ohio teenager Devon Griffin returned home from Sunday church services and began playing video games before realizing that the house was unusually quiet. He then went upstairs to find the corpses of his brother Derek, mother Susan, and Susan's new husband William Lisk. The killer had bludgeoned Derek with a claw hammer, shot William 5 times with a pistol, and raped Susan before shooting her 3 times. Devon was so traumatized he could only say it was like something out of a haunted house. The killer was found to be William Lisk's son from a previous marriage, William Lisk Jr., who had a history of schizophrenia and violence. William was later picked up at a halfway house and pleaded guilty to all 3 murders. Later in court he said, "I loved my dad very much and it makes me sick every time I think about what I did. I can't really explain why all this had to happen, but I think most of it all had to do with my mental illness." William later committed suicide in prison in 2015. The Unholy Preacher. Although he'd previously served separate prison sentences for stabbing one woman and murdering another, John D. White was paroled and became the pastor of a small Michigan church. Living in a trailer park, he would become romantically involved with a female resident a few trailers down and would frequently babysit the woman's son. On Halloween night 2012, while the 3-year-old boy was in the trailer, John knocked the boy's mother out with a rubber mallet and strangled her to death with a plastic zip tie. He stuffed her in a garbage bag and dumped her in the woods. Then he returned to the trailer and dressed the boy up in a Halloween costume, whereupon the boy's father came back to pick him up. After being arrested for murder, White told the police his crime was part of a lingering fantasy to have sex with a corpse, but that he'd forgot whether or not he completed that act. The Toolbox Killers. Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris were known as the Toolbox Killers because they routinely employed implements such as pliers and hammers in their vicious series of kidnap, rape, and torture murders of 5 teenage California girls in 1979. The last of these murders was 16-year-old Shirley Ledford. It occurred after they spotted Shirley hitchhiking home from a Halloween party. They picked her up in a van, and over the course of hours, they bound and gagged her, smashing her elbow repeatedly with a hammer, sodomized her with pliers, and finally strangled her to death with a wire coat hanger before dumping her on a random front lawn. During the course of Ledford's murder, they tape recorded themselves taunting her while she screamed for mercy. Roy Norris was later quoted as saying, "We've all heard women scream in horror films. Still, we know no one is really screaming. Why? Simply because an actress can produce some sounds that convince us that something vile and heinous is happening. If you ever heard that tape, there's just no possible way you'd not begin crying and trembling. I doubt you could listen to more than a full 60 seconds of it." So there you have it, our list of 5 gruesome Halloween crimes. Were there any other spine-tingling, blood-curdling, gut-wrenching crimes that we missed? If so, be sure to mention them in the comments section below. And as always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And run for your life.